Good evening. Welcome to the October meeting of the Upper Darby Shade Tree Commission meeting. Today is October 3rd. I'm Mike Atwell. With me is Eric Burns. From the township managing the video is our pal Bill Kaplan, and we've got some members of the public here and a brief agenda, and we'll see where it takes us. First item on the agenda, as always, is relates to the meeting minutes from the month of September. I'm going to suggest that we accept the meeting minutes from September.
I'll second that.
Great. No objections, so
Looks good.
We'll make those notes official. Thanks, Eric. Second item on our agenda relates to the fall planting. A number of large container trees were donated to Upper Darby Shade Tree Commission through the Horticultural Society of Pennsylvania. And a little bit of work needs to happen as far as the Shade Tree Commission working with the Department of Public Works to figure out how and where and when to get some of those trees planted. I know we have a kind of a thumbnail sketch of locations of parks, of public places like Westchester Pike. There are at least a couple to go onto Westchester Pike. I'm not
Huey.
Sorry,
Huey.
Park.
There was an Addingham Trail
Addingham
spot.
Trail, perhaps. So there's a good
There's
list
a
of
lot
those.
and then we had a couple down 69th Street we were talking about,
Okay.
maybe for replacements.
Oh yeah, and there are at least two replacements on 69th Street Boulevard or 69th Street, right, to replace ones that are that need to be replaced. So we have a good list of things. I guess the good news is we haven't had to purchase any. We haven't purchased trees this year, but with all things working as they should, we should still be able to replace some needed plantings, plant a few new things, and start looking at the year 2025 as a year of a little bit more planting and definitely more maintenance planning and follow through. I do have a note in the agenda that some of the trees that were donated by PHS are significantly root bound. So I'm not sure. I think we probably have to examine them to figure out what that means. And it says root bound.
Yeah.
Yes. But the extent of it and kind of what they look like, we'll have to investigate. But yeah, because the recent trees that we've received from PHS were in large vessels or large bags and not bare root like we usually buy them. So, so we'll have to look into that a little bit. I don't know, any thoughts about that, Eric?
Well, there's no loss if you put them in and they don't do well, but you can cut some of the roots.
The idea is,
you can open it up and do a little.
They probably
root
need
pruning.
a little more care right now.
Yeah, you have to look
if
at them.
there's not a lot of soil in there, and if they're mostly root, and if they're above ground, which I imagine they are.
Mhm.
I know a few weeks ago I went to the nursery when we had received a number of river birch, and they were in, I think, 10-gallon sort of buckets, and they were given to us from PHS, and they're really nice specimens, but they were super dry.
Oh,
So
okay.
I just took some 5-gallon containers from, and I just watered that day because so we might need to organize something like that again. Work with the tree tenders on just paying attention to these like large specimens that we have access to. Okay. Third item on the agenda is the proposed expansion of Upper Darby's tree nursery. A little background, Upper Darby's tree nursery was begun a few years ago by fencing off an area of Naylor's Run Park in Upper Darby, and jointly with the tree tenders of Upper Darby, managing that space as a place where we being the township and the tree tenders, where we could stage saplings and other larger tree specimens for a short period of time until they could be deployed somewhere successfully. And it's been a success to the extent that even though specimens are coming in and going out, it could be advantageous to expand that space a little bit. And so the Shade Tree Commission has reached out to Upper Darby's Planning Commission to initiate some activities such that we could create a formal agreement with the tree tenders. So because a structure has been built in the nursery to house the tools and things like that, and there's a gigantic water container that's used. And so we just need to, I think, formalize what belongs to whom and how we manage it going forward. But if the past is any measure of how the agreement will go, it'll be really easy. But now's the time to do it. We would probably ask Public Works folks to auger some holes for new posts for the fencing of the nursery, but the tree tenders lean on volunteer labor a lot, and the township takes great advantage of that as well. And so I think if we can work something like that out in the near term, that would be really good. So that is in the works.
If there's a potential to get the post installed too, it would be nice. That's what Steven said, so.
He said
if they want to dig the hole and drop the post in, we'll put the fencing up.
Yes, and that depends partly, I guess, on the schedule of the Public Works teams and all that kind of stuff, so.
That way you don't have an open hole sitting there too.
Right, yeah, definitely not that, right? Yeah, coordinating with Public Works would be ideal in that even if they need to auger and go on to their next thing, if we can have some of our volunteers at the ready to drop the posts in, fill the holes, so we don't leave a risk situation for people walking dogs in that great park. That's a really good point, Eric. Let me see. We talked about kind of fall planting, tree nursery.
The nursery, it's more just that it's in the works still.
Yeah.
It's still in the working stages with the Public Works. And
I know, just for the public's benefit, I know the tree tenders of Upper Darby have been sort of currently canvassing for folks who might want trees planted on their private properties, not so much in public lands, but if you're interested in that activity, look for the tree tenders of Upper Darby to help you out, and if not this fall, then maybe in the spring, because as a volunteer of that organization too, we plant a lot of trees and we do a lot of good things in the township, and we meet cool people who want trees and understand the value of them, and so that's an opportunity as well. That brings us to item 4 of today's agenda, and that's public comment. And I see our great friend Dolores Lombardi. Hi, Dolores.
Lombardi. I live in the Kirkland section of Upper Darby.
Did you see, I put the microphone up, so,
Is it on?
if you press the thing and the green light comes on.
Okay, Dolores Lombardi lives in the Kirkland section of Upper Darby. So I'll just report on the trees in my area. On Westchester Pike, it hasn't rained since like August. That little drizzles we got last week didn't do anything. In fact, on the weather, I heard it's the third driest September ever since 1880 was the driest, and we're in close contention with the second driest. So the ground is bone dry. There were a couple trees on the median I told you earlier in the summer. They started wilting, and they were youngish trees, and they had got nicked by the weed whackers also. So I watered them, and they revived. However, there's a couple more trees that look like they're dying, and one of them had to be planted 4 years ago at least, so it wasn't small. So I watered that. I took a knife and nicked the branches. It's still green underneath, but the leaves are completely dead. It's right in front of St. Lawrence, and it's not, the other trees there are kind of making it, but I look at the trunk and it's been banged up also. So between getting nicked by weed whackers and mowers, which opens up the bark, they need extra water, and then there's no rain. So I'm kind of watching them and watering them, but it's my own water that I'm dragging out there because I just want to keep them alive. And fortunately, it's going into dormancy season, but it's bone dry now.
And it's only early October.
And there's no rain in the forecast even now, but it's going up to 77, 78. So we had gotten, as of a couple years ago, the township started taking a watering truck around. Remember, Jen watered the trees for us? Like, we had a drought. We gave the signals. She got them on Westchester Pike. She did Sellers Library and a couple other, the new plantings. And that sort of, we got a change of administration. Not everybody's on the same page. This sort of fell by the wayside, but sometimes it's not needed. But when it's needed, you got to be able to call them to come out. So if we could get that water truck going for next year. Now, with the two trees, I know I came last meeting, 2 trees had been hit by cars, smallest near me, and Evan got those as spots for replanting now. If you can text me or get in touch with me when they're going to be planted, I'll bring some 5-gallon buckets of water and water the holes when they're made, put the tree in, then they can plant them, and they'll come out and I'll put more water on them. But that's going to be, I think, unless we get a good rain soon, when you go to plant trees, you're going to be needing to bring water.
Pre-water the hole.
Yeah, it's just really, so I think another thing that will help, now I did on the 2 youngest trees that I was protecting since July, I did have a couple of those tree diaper bags, and I put them around. And when we got that little misting rain last week, not a lot, those absolutely absorbed that water. So they help even when there's not a lot of water around. And so as much as we can put them around, that makes a difference. And I think the other thing about at least the median trees is I don't think they've been mulched now for 3 years or so. And all the mulch that had been is gone. It's not just that the mulch helps retain moisture, but it also keeps the weed whackers from getting as close to the trees. And it's
not as tempting to a staffer with a weed whacker.
Well, because they don't feel they have to get as close. And some of the tree diaper bags that we put down a couple years ago on some trees, they've gotten nicked by the weed whackers too. They're kind of, so I guess every season you may have new people, but there's got to be like a little training at the beginning of every spring for the mow.
We're working. We hope we're working toward that with the new year and
right.
some staff.
It's been a continuous problem since I've been around Upper Darby. Some of the tree trunk protectors that we have put on those trees, they last for a couple seasons and they end up weed whacking them off also. So maybe it's something, I have some of them, I'll go reinforce again.
It makes me wonder if we might be able to find something that could either more of the tree guards or something we could buy in bulk.
Well, I thought of,
like them,
I think the tree guards,
zip tie or something.
yeah, the tree,
stout.
yeah, those are good. It's just when they get too close, they can hit them for, maybe a gardener's cloth when you plant a new tree. The gardener's cloth,
Yeah,
Eric, yeah,
yeah,
maybe, I remember Clyde did that on a few trees. He had some in the truck, so he put some down. Just put some gardener's cloth around and then mulch on top, and that will keep weeds from coming up.
a little while, yeah.
Well, for the first, it probably has to be, well, the gardener's cloth will last if you keep
It's
mulching
not
it.
that they'll last, but you know, how seeds, weed
Right.
seeds.
They'll grow
you
in the
know,
mulch.
Yeah, they grow in the mulch, whatever. But yeah, no.
Well,
that's good.
mulching did seem to help, but
Sure.
I was here, I volunteered with Clyde in 2008. That's when I started with maybe 2007 even, started with the shade tree thing. And this issue has always been an issue. Now, around 2011, there was a Westchester Pike Business Association. There was community service people from the township helped start it. And I ended up being the secretary treasurer because the mayor then said, you should join because you've been planting trees on the median. So where was I going with this? Oh, so what the business people cared about most then was the median wasn't getting cut very often. It was trashy, it still gets trashy in the winter, but it gets, and that's what they wanted the most. So at that point, they hired somebody else to cut them, to mow. And in the contract was a contingency that they could not harm the trees. And they didn't, because since they were getting paid and it was
Right.
in their contract.
Right.
So from about 2011 until recently, they did not nick the trees. And that was great, because we used to put stones around, which they didn't hate. But now I think it's great that the township can save money and do the mowing themselves, because that's what happened as of a few, that's probably appropriate. However, they don't seem to have that mindset of we can't hurt the trees.
Right.
Because one of them's got, one of them, I think we just put it in years ago, has got the bark 360 degrees off. Sometimes that can kill a tree when the bark is nicked off. Now, it's not, fortunately for that tree, it's not deeply off. And I'm watering it, and it might, and I put another tree trunk thing on it,
Right.
and hopefully it'll make it. But, so that's the hugest challenge, and I haven't checked Sellers Library recently. Because I know this summer they weren't looking so good, but we got those students in that helped water them and mulch them, and then it rained, but we're gonna have to keep, now some years you get so much water that we have too much rain. So there's it seems like with climate change that we're gonna seesaw. We might get 2 or 3 seasons in a row, which we did. We had like three plus years or more with tons of rain, didn't have to worry. It was great. Plant trees, they thrive. But then you might have to suffer through a couple seasons, so you have to put more resources in. But maybe there needs to be some kind of a reserve for watering, or pay or whatever. And it gets used when it doesn't need it. It might not get used some years, and you can bank it up and then use it a little more. But that's my perspective.
Yeah, I've been really grateful that we're not having Asheville's weather.
Yes, right.
Like a
Well-
community that, for a couple hundred years hadn't had anything like that, and they've got the opposite that we do.
Well,
And
that's
just-
too much, right? But
Yes, that's my point, though.
Yeah, no,
Like,
that's
we're having not
okay.
enough, they're having too much. It is absolutely less predictable than ever.
yeah.
And we do need,
Well, we have had years where we had too much, but nothing like that, not a hurricane.
Yeah.
Well, the Schuylkill flooded.
69th Street flooded.
It was about a few years ago, the Schuylkill flooded,
Yeah.
and I got pictures, it shut down the whole
Yeah.
expressway, but it still wasn't as bad, not nearly
Yeah.
as bad what
No.
they're getting down there.
No.
So if you, get in touch with me, and I'll go out and meet the guys when they're
Mhm.
putting the trees in on the median, and I'll bring water that day.
I'm expecting it's probably a month of November.
Yeah, well, maybe it'll rain
I
then,
think,
but
right?
there's-
Gotta wait for, like,
We gotta
the
wait for some
dormancy.
rain, yeah, we gotta wait for some rain.
Yeah.
you could start now if it was
Yeah, if it
not,
was
but
wet,
so
yeah.
dry, why bother? But,
You can plant.
I mean, if we're replacing, we won't need to do 811, right?
no. But I
um,
think,
But only a couple might, we'll have to see how many are new.
October would probably be fine to plant, except it's so dry.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know. Yeah.
Now, about the root bound thing, I know, because Bill Grant, you remember Bill, he used to talk, that he would just hack off some of the root.
Yeah,
Just-
yeah.
You don't want it, as long as.
Right,
it's-
circling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cut the
Girdling,
circle,
yeah.
but again, they'll need to be watered a lot.
Right.
So when you
Right.
plant those trees
Mhm.
and you're hacking off the root,
Mhm.
it's probably a big hole, put a lot of
Yeah.
water in, let that
Yep.
seep in, put the tree in, and then water a lot, so. Well, good luck.
Thank you. Thanks for-
Thanks, Dolores.
Keeping on top of it all.
Thanks for coming to the meetings, Dolores. Thank you. All right. I think that concludes our, the October meeting for Upper Darby Shade Tree Commission. If you have comments, questions, if you want to reach out to us, you can email us at Shade Tree Commission.
Shade Tree.
It's shade tree at upperdarby.org. Yeah. So, do that as well if you can't make the meetings or if you have questions or concerns or whatever. Shade tree at upperdarby.org. Very good. Eric, thank you. Bill, Dolores, thank you. We'll see you next month.